Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I'm really glad you're here with us.
It's good to be here.
Today, we're opening up a stack of notes on the Psalms, but we're going to be looking at them through a very specific lens. That's Charles Spurgeon's huge commentary, The Treasury of David.
And that is absolutely the right place to start, because it's not just one man's opinion, you see.
Right.
Spurgeon kind of acts like a curator. He pulls in what he calls all these quaint sayings from Martin Luther, John Donne, the Puritans, even medieval commentators.
So you get a view of the text that's sort of been pressure tested over time.
It has, a very long time.
And we are focusing on one psalm today, Psalm 62. And I have to admit, when I first read through the prep material, I was really taken by the nickname scholars have for this text.
Oh, yeah.
They call it the only psalm.
It is a striking title.
It sounds so exclusive, like it's the VIP section of the Bible or something.
Well, in a way, it is. The nickname comes from a single Hebrew word. The word is ak. It's just spelled A-C. Now, in our English Bibles, you'll see it translated a few different ways, like truly or surely, sometimes only.
Ah, so the translators are mixing it up for flow.
They are. But in the original Hebrew, that one word, ak, acts like a hammer. It's just striking the same nail over and over again. It shows up 6 times in just 12 verses.
So in the original, it would read more like only, only, only.
Correct. And the whole thesis of the psalm is that trust isn't a mixture. It can't be, 50% God and 50% my stock portfolio.
Or 80% God and 20% my own cleverness.
Exactly. Spurgeon had a quote in the notes that really hit me on this. He said, "A partly confidence is a vain confidence."
Which is the Reformed view in a nutshell, right?
It is. If you add anything to your faith, you actually subtract from its purity. This psalm is the definition of solus deus, God alone. If you're relying on God and something else, you aren't actually relying on God. You're just hedging your bets.
Okay, so before we jump into the verses themselves, I want to look at the little header. It says, to the chief musician, to Jeduthun. Now, I see that name Jeduthun pop up in the Psalms sometimes, but I usually just skip right over it.
A lot of people do.
Who is this guy?
He was a pretty significant figure. Along with Asaph and Heman, Jeduthun was one of the 3 great choir leaders that King David set up. So he was at the very top of the musical food chain in Israel.
The celebrity worship leader of his day.
You could definitely say that. But there's a fascinating little detail in the Book of Chronicles that Spurgeon points out. When it lists the duties of Jeduthun's sons, they're not just listed as singers.
Okay.
They're also listed as porters.
Porters. You mean like carrying luggage?
More like doorkeepers, gatekeepers.
Wait, so the dad is the chief musician, he's the headliner,
Uh-huh.
but the family business includes manning the doors.
That's how it seems. And the source material draws this beautiful application from it. The idea is that, those who occupy the highest posts in the choir shouldn't be ashamed to wait at the doors of the Lord's house.
Wow. That's a check on the ego, isn't it?
It really is, and it sets the tone for this whole psalm. Before we even hear a word about trusting God, we get this reminder that true service involves humility. You sing the high notes, you open the doors, it's all the same service.
So, keeping that humility in mind, let's look at the first verse. Truly my soul waiteth upon God. From him cometh my salvation. Now, you said that only word is in here.
It is, and the literal translation is actually quite jarring. It reads something like, "Only to God is my soul silence."
Is my soul silence? That's different. It's not my soul is quiet, but my soul is silence. That sounds almost existential.
It's a state of being. The idea is that the presence of God has so awed the heart that it just stops churning. It stops its own motion.
I have to be honest, silence is not a word I would normally associate with my own brain. My internal monologue is usually running at 100 miles an hour. I'm thinking about the grocery list or that email I forgot to send or an argument I had yesterday.
That's just the human condition. We are noisy creatures on the inside. But Spurgeon uses a metaphor here that I find incredibly helpful to visualize this. He says the mind should be like the sea beneath the wind.
Okay, help me picture that. The sea is, rarely quiet.
Well, think about how the sea moves. It doesn't decide to move on its own. It doesn't have an engine.
It's moved by the wind.
Right. If the wind stops, the sea settles. So the idea here is that our souls should be responsive to God's breath, the Spirit, but they should be free from all that self-caused commotion.
So I shouldn't be generating my own waves of anxiety.
Exactly. We spend so much energy churning up our own anxiety, our own plans, creating these storms that don't need to exist. To say my soul is silence means I've stopped trying to manipulate the outcome. I'm just waiting for the wind of God to move me.
There was another phrase from the notes that stuck with me. We should be waxed to the Lord, but adamant to every other force.
That's a great contrast. Adamant is an old word related to diamond, the hardest substance.
So we should be hard as a rock.
To the world, yes. When the world tries to pressure you or scare you or mold you into its image, you should be unyielding, like a diamond. But to God, you should be like soft wax, ready to take his impression. The problem is, we so often get that backward.
We're stubborn with God, and we're total pushovers for the world.
Precisely. We argue with God's commands, but we collapse the moment our boss gives us a funny look. This only psalm is calling for a complete reversal. Soft to God, hard to the world.
Verse 2 continues this idea. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved.
Do you notice that little qualifier in there?
Yeah, greatly. I shall not be greatly moved.
It's a surprisingly honest admission, isn't it? David isn't saying, I'm a statue, I feel absolutely nothing.
Well, that's comforting, because if the standard is I never feel a moment of worry, then I fail that test every single day.
The standard isn't stoicism. The source material compares the believer to a ship at anchor. Now, when a big storm comes, does a ship at anchor sit perfectly still on the water?
No, of course not. It bobs around, it swings with the tide, it gets hit by the waves.
It might pitch, it might roll, it might shake quite a bit, but it's not removed from its station. And that's the key distinction. The believer might shake like a leaf in the wind, and that just admits how weak we really are. But the root holds.
So I can be moved. I can feel the stress, I can feel the fear, but I'm not greatly moved in the sense of being swept away from my anchor.
You're not lost, you're just shaken, and that's permitted.
But then David, he shifts his focus completely. In verses 3 and 4, he stops looking up at God and he starts looking at his enemies. And he has some pretty choice words for them.
He does.
How long will ye imagine mischief against a man? Ye shall be slain, all of you. As a bowing wall shall ye be, and as a tottering fence.
That image of the bowing wall is one of the most vivid in the whole text.
I've walked past construction sites where, a temporary fence or a wall is leaning way out over the sidewalk, and my first instinct is always to cross the street. I don't want to be anywhere near that thing. It looks dangerous.
That's the initial reaction, right? Fear. It looks like it's about to crush you. And the enemies of David and, our spiritual enemies often look just like that. They seem massive, looming, ready to fall on us and just wipe us out.
But Spurgeon kind of flips the script on this image, doesn't he?
He does. He asks us to think about why the wall is bowing. It's bowing because it's structurally unsound. That bulge is actually a sign of failure. It's not a sign of strength. It's a sign of imminent collapse.
So when I see the enemy looking big and scary, maybe swelling with pride, I should actually see that as a sign that they're about to break.
Wickedness is inherently self-destructive. It cannot stand upright on its own. Moral gravity will eventually bring it all down. So while that wall looks threatening, it's really just a tottering fence.
And there's a warning here about where we choose to stand. Spurgeon says no one benefits from standing near a falling wall.
If you align yourself with that kind of instability, you're going to get hurt. I mean, even if it doesn't crush you, the dust from the collapse will stifle you. It's a call to separate ourselves from systems, from people who are building without a proper foundation.
The text also calls out the cowardice of these enemies. It asks, how long will ye imagine mischief against a man? Singular. One man.
It's the classic mob mentality. They're all ganging up on one person.
It doesn't feel like a fair fight.
It never is. The enemies of God do not have what we would call chivalry. They rely on numbers. Spurgeon uses the example of Job. I mean, think about what Satan had to throw at Job.
Yeah, it wasn't a duel. It was everything.
Sabeans, Chaldeans, lightning from the sky, a whirlwind from the wilderness. Satan had to marshal an entire army and the forces of nature just to try and break one righteous man.
That actually makes me feel a little better about feeling overwhelmed. If I feel like the whole world is against me, well, that's just standard operating procedure for the enemy.
Right. Spurgeon phrases it so well. He says, there is no chivalrous blood in the veins of hell. If you are looking for a fair fight, you are in the wrong war.
Verse 4 gives us the specific tactics of this mob. They only consult to cast him down from his excellency. They delight in lies. They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly.
That word excellency is interesting. It can mean elevation or a high position. The wicked hate the fact that God has lifted the righteous up. It eats at them. They want to pull him back down to their level.
And their method is flattery, bless with the mouth, curse inwardly.
Spurgeon uses this great Old English term for this. He calls it cozening.
Cozening. I like that word. It sounds just as slimy as it is.
It means to trick or deceive, but usually with a smile. It's the colleague who compliments your presentation to your face, but then dismantles your reputation in a private email.
So how are we supposed to deal with cozening people? If I try to confront them, they'll just deny it because they're liars by nature.
You can't win an argument with a liar. It's impossible. And that's why Spurgeon's advice here is so practical. He says the only safe reply is silence.
We're back to silence again.
We are. You can't out-talk them. You can't out-scheme them. You just have to retreat back to that position from verse 1. You let your soul be silent before God and let him handle your defense.
Which is exactly what happens in verse 5. And I notice a really interesting shift here. In verse 1, David says, my soul waits. It's a statement of fact. But in verse 5, he says, my soul, wait thou only upon God. He's ordering himself to do it.
This is a self-exhortation. He's literally preaching to his own soul.
But why does he have to tell himself to do something that he claims he's already doing?
Because we leak. That's why. The human soul is not a sealed vessel. We might be full of faith at 8 in the morning during our quiet time, but then we hit traffic, or we get a bill we weren't expecting, or someone's rude to us at work. By noon, we've drifted.
So we have to constantly be resetting the anchor.
We do. We have to grab our own souls by the collar, metaphorically, and say, hey, get back in line. Wait on God. We have to stir ourselves up to maintain that holy position.
There's a key phrase in verse 5, for my expectation is from him. And Spurgeon calls expectation the child of prayer and faith.
That's a crucial insight. If you pray for rain, you should probably carry an umbrella. That's expectation. If we say we're waiting on God, we should actually expect him to show up. The problem is, we often pray to God, but then we look to the mailman for the answer.
We look to all the secondary causes.
Right. We say we want God to provide, but we're obsessively checking our bank balance or waiting for a specific person to call us back. David is saying, no, my expectation is from him. The deliverance might come through a person, but the source is always God.
Now, look at this. Look at the progression that happens in verse 6. Remember back in verse 2, he said, I shall not be greatly moved.
Yes.
Now in verse 6, he says, he only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be moved.
The adverb is gone.
The greatly has just vanished.
This is the result of that self-preaching we were just talking about. He started with a realistic admission. I might shake a little, but after meditating on God, after talking to his own soul, his faith has hardened.
It's solidified.
Experience develops those spiritual muscles. What started as a hope has now become absolute defiance.
Yeah.
He is now looking at that bowing wall and saying, I am not moving, not 1 inch.
Then in verse 7, he just starts piling up the names of God. In God is my salvation and my glory. The rock of my strength and my refuge is in God. It feels like he's just trying to list every possible attribute he can think of.
Spurgeon uses an analogy here that involves bees, and I think it's just so profound.
Bees.
Yes, think about how a bee approaches a flower. Does it just land on the petal, walk around for a bit, and then fly off?
No, it crawls right inside. It gets covered in pollen.
It penetrates the flower to get to the nectar. It has to go deep inside to extract the sweetness. Spurgeon says our faith must act like that bee. It's not enough to just say the titles of God, rock, refuge, glory. That's just landing on the petal.
So how do we burrow into a title like that?
We'll take the word refuge. Don't just say it. Stop and imagine a storm. Imagine the wind is howling, the rain is lashing down. Now imagine a heavy stone door slamming shut behind you, and the sudden silence of a safe room. You feel the safety. That is burrowing. You have to work the metaphor until it yields the honey of comfort.
And the key, according to the notes, is that one little word, my.
That little pronoun makes all the difference in the world. It's not enough to know that God is a rock. The devils know that. Theology textbooks know that. He must be my rock.
It has to be a personal possession.
It's the difference between seeing a pile of gold in a museum display and having that gold in your own pocket. The my is what puts the honey in the comb for you.
So then in verse 8, David turns outward. He's talked to God, he's talked to his enemies, he's talked to himself. Now he's talking to the congregation.
Yeah.
Trust in him at all times, ye people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us.
Trust in him at all times. That sounds like such a simple instruction, almost a cliche. But if you stop and think about it, that is incredibly rigorous.
At all times. So that includes the good times.
Which, I would argue, can be even harder than the bad times.
You really think so?
Absolutely. When you're in a crisis, when the medical report is bad, you are forced to trust God. You have no other option. But when the sun is shining, when the bank account is full, when everybody likes you, It is so easy to start trusting in your own success.
Spurgeon notes that a day without trust is a day of wrath, even if it happens to be a day of mirth.
We're always leaning on something, and if we aren't leaning on God because we feel strong, we're actually in a very, very dangerous position.
Then he gives this command, pour out your heart. The visual I get from that is taking a bucket and turning it completely upside down, just emptying it.
That's the idea. Empty it all out, hide nothing.
But I think a lot of us, especially in, religious circles, we feel like we need to edit our prayers. We can't tell God that we're angry or that we're terrified or that we have doubts.
The Westminster Assembly Annotations, one of the sources Spurgeon quotes, uses this striking image. It says that our wicked nature tends to bite on the bridle.
Like a stubborn horse that just refuses to be led.
Exactly. We clam up, we hide our grief and sullenness, we think we're being strong by holding it all in. But Spurgeon has a name for that. He calls it hoarding wretchedness.
Hoarding wretchedness. That's a clinical diagnosis right there.
Think about a stream. If you dam it up, what happens? The water rises, it swells, it rages, it becomes destructive. But if you clear the channel and just let it flow, it moves peacefully. When we keep our griefs and our fears inside, they turn toxic. They poison us.
So the pouring out is actually a safety valve.
It is essential mental and spiritual hygiene. God is the only Father Confessor who can actually absolve and heal us. Why would we hide anything from him? He already knows it anyway.
Now we come to section 5, verses 9 and 10. This is where David pulls out the scales and starts weighing humanity. And I have to say, he is not very complimentary.
He is brutally realistic. Verse 9. Surely men of low degree are vanity, and men of high degree are a lie. To be laid in the balance, they are altogether lighter than vanity.
Let's break down the class distinctions he's making there. Men of low degree. This is the common man, right? The masses.
Right. Spurgeon connects us to the idea of the crowd, or maybe democracy in its rawest form. He calls them vanity, which means vapor or breath, because they are so fickle.
They're changeable.
As mobile as waves on the ocean. I mean, think of the crowd in Jerusalem. On Palm Sunday, they're shouting, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. They're throwing their coats on the road for Jesus.
And just 5 days later,
it's crucify him. The very same people. So if you base your self-worth or your safety on popularity, on the applause of the crowd, you are building on smoke.
Okay, so the common man is fickle. But what about the men of high degree, the elites, the people with influence and money? David calls them a lie.
Well, why is the elite man a lie while the common man is just vanity? It's because the powerful man promises something. His position implies that he can help you, he has patronage, he has influence, he looks like a solid marble column that you can lean on.
But when you actually lean on him,
he yields disappointment. He's too busy, or he changes his mind, or he loses his own influence. A lie is worse than vanity because it involves deception. The common man doesn't promise you much. The powerful man promises everything and delivers nothing.
So David takes both groups and puts them on the scale. The masses on one side, the elites on the other.
And he says they are altogether lighter than vanity.
This is that mathematical absurdity we mentioned in the intro.
I mean, think about the physics of that. A feather has some weight. It's incredibly light, but it has mass. Vanity, emptiness, a vacuum has zero weight. But creature confidence, relying on other humans, that has less weight than vanity.
It's negative value.
If you add human confidence to your equation, you are not just adding zero, you are subtracting. You are actually worse off than if you had started with nothing at all.
And that leads him directly into verse 10, which tackles the other great rival to God, money. If riches increase, set not your heart upon them.
Spurgeon gives a really strong warning here. Obviously, ill-gotten wealth, money you stole or cheated for, is full of canker. It's cursed. But he's actually more concerned with honest wealth.
Why is that?
Notice the phrasing. If riches increase, the Hebrew implies that they just sort of sprout up of their own accord.
So this isn't somebody scheming to get rich. This is just business is good, the stock market is up, your house value just doubled.
Exactly. It feels natural. It feels like a blessing. And that's precisely why it's so dangerous. It's easy to reject dirty money. It is very, very hard to reject the security that comes from honest success.
Spurgeon quotes John Wesley here, and I love this little anecdote. Wesley said that in 50 years of ministry, he rarely, if ever, convinced a miser that he was guilty of covetousness.
It's a total blind spot. Everyone defines rich as someone who has more money than I do. If I make $50,000 a year, the rich man makes $100,000. If I make $1 million, the rich man is the one who makes $10 million.
So nobody ever thinks this verse applies to them. Oh, I'm not setting my heart on riches, I'm just paying the bills.
And all the while, the heart is slowly wrapping itself around that security. Spurgeon uses another bird analogy here. The Bible says riches make themselves wings. But Spurgeon notes they are not sparrow wings.
They are eagle wings.
And eagle wings are strong. They are built for long-distance flight. And they fly toward heaven, that is, away from their owner.
That's a haunting image. You think you're holding onto your belt, but it's actually growing wings specifically designed to leave you.
So the theological conclusion is this. To bow an immortal spirit, a soul that will live forever, to the contemplation of fading possessions is, in Spurgeon's words, extreme folly. You are trying to feed an eternal fire with scraps of paper. It just burns up and it's gone.
We're heading into the final stretch of the psalm now. Verses 11 and 12 give us the foundational reasons why we should trust God alone.
Verse 11, God hath spoken once, twice have I heard this, that power belongeth unto God.
God spoke once, I heard twice. Is that like when I tell my kids to clean their room and I have to say it 5 times before they hear me?
It's quite the opposite, actually. It speaks to God's immutability, his efficiency. God doesn't stutter. He doesn't need to correct himself or issue a revision. He speaks once and reality is established.
So why do we hear it twice?
Well, the Puritans would say we hear it first in Revelation, in the Bible, and then we hear the echo of it in Providence, in our daily lives. We read in the scripture that God is mighty, and then we see a thunderstorm or we see a changed life, and we hear the echo. Yes, he is.
And the message that we hear twice is, power belongeth unto God.
This is the first of 2 pillars. If all might belongs to God, then it doesn't belong to the Wall Street banker. It doesn't belong to the politician. It certainly doesn't belong to the mob with the bowing wall. It belongs only to God.
But, might by itself can be terrifying. If I know someone has absolute control, I might respect them, but I might also be scared to death of them. A tyrant has might.
Which is exactly why verse 12 is so essential. It follows immediately. Also unto thee, O Lord, belongeth mercy.
This is the second pillar.
Might without mercy is a monster. But mercy without might is just a nice, weak sentiment. Imagine a friend who loves you dearly, that's mercy, but has no money and no influence to help you out of a jam and no might. They can weep with you, but they can't save you.
But in God, the two are perfectly blended.
He has the infinite ability to save you, and the infinite mercy to want to save you. And that is why we wait only on him. Why would you wait on a human who might have a tiny bit of might but no mercy? Or maybe a little mercy but no might?
That brings us to the very final phrase, which I admit has always puzzled me, especially coming from a Reformed perspective where we emphasize grace. It says, for thou renderest to every man according to his work.
It sounds like the opposite of grace, doesn't it? It sounds like karma, You get what you earn.
Right. If God gives me what I deserve according to my work, I am in serious trouble. My work is flawed.
This is where we have to put on our theological thinking caps. If God dealt with us in strict justice, you are absolutely right, we would be consumed. But Spurgeon and the Reformed commentators argue that this rewarding of our works is in itself a supreme act of mercy.
How so?
Think about it. Our works are imperfect. Even our best prayers are distracted. Even our acts of charity are often tinged with pride. For God to look at those flawed efforts, accept them, and then reward them, that isn't debt. That is pure grace.
So, he's not paying us a wage that we earned. He's giving us a gift that's totally out of proportion.
Spurgeon uses the illustration of a king who gives a man an entire kingdom just for picking up a piece of straw for him. The reward has almost nothing to do with the action.
And I suppose, if we go even deeper, who gave us the strength to pick up that straw in the first place?
God did. Augustine said that when God rewards our merits, he is merely crowning his own gifts. He provides the strength for the work, he forgives the imperfection in the work, and then he lavishly rewards the result.
That really brings it all full circle. Man neither helps us properly nor rewards us properly. God does both.
Indeed.
So let's try to summarize what we've unpacked today. It feels like we've traveled a long way from that first verse.
We started with that core concept of the only, that absolute refusal to mix our trust. And we looked at the silence of the soul, that state of being waxed to God and adamant to the world.
We looked at the enemies, that bowing wall that looks so scary, but it's actually just falling down. And we saw the vanity of human status, whether it's the mob or the elite. They're all lighter than a breath of air.
And we saw how faith matures, how it moves from I shall not be greatly moved to the defiant I shall not be moved. And that happens through that hard work of preaching to our own souls and burrowing into God's titles like a bee looking for nectar.
And finally, we landed on those twin pillars, might and mercy. The reason we can be silent is that the one we are waiting for has both the muscle to help us and the heart to love us.
It's a complete theology of trust packed into 12 short verses.
I want to leave our listener with a final thought to mull over this week. We spent a lot of time talking about the vanity of man, how people are literally later than nothing when you put them on the scales of reality.
Yes.
And yet, be honest with yourself. How much of your mental energy this week was spent worrying about what those vanities think of you? We fear their criticism. We crave their applause. We let their opinions completely ruin our day.
It's a fundamental calculation error.
It is. We are weighing the zero-weight opinion of man against the infinite weight of God's glory. If God is might and mercy, why are we trembling before a tottering fence?
That is the question to carry with us.
Thank you for helping us navigate this
It
text.
was a real pleasure.
And to you, listening, I would just encourage you to find some moments of true silence before God this week. Try to turn off the noise and just let your soul be waxed to the Lord. This has been Reformed Thinking.